Welcome, 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 everybody. Welcome to Satan and Coffee, the Friday edition. I hope you all are doing well and have had an amazing fucking week. I am joined with BikerWitch, or as most of us know, just Patrick. So for those of you that have been following the channel for a while, we've had Patrick on a couple of times in the past. I think 3 times total. We've had him twice on individually, and then once for what I call the demonic panel. He was on the good one that happened. So when I say the good one,
It was
he's
a
the one
bad
that
one?
didn't. There was another one after that just went. It was a shit show. Uh, so
Jeez.
yeah, two of the
I,
people
I
got
thought
like
the first one
really
went kind of
high.
rowdy.
I mean, no, the
I
first
thought
one
the
was
first
good
one got
though.
kind of rowdy.
It
Yeah.
got rowdy, but it was still controlled. You know, it was good though. It was a good
Yeah. Yeah.
conversation. But the second one just it just fucking swan dive into the ground, like it
Jeez.
lost all semblance of like people are just going, what the fuck even is this? So but it's always a pleasure to have Patrick on. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
For those that don't know, he is the owner and operator and primary artist of Umchara Tattoo and Occult Shop. It's still a cult shop as well, right?
Yeah, we sometimes use it, sometimes don't. The occult stuff doesn't move as well as the tattoos, to be honest with you, but
But it's still there.
it sets the tone for the shop for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I have yet to pay a visit, but this kind of happens when you're in Jersey. Because who wants to go
I'm
to
actually in
Jersey?
Long Island. Basically the same thing, but Long Island. I'm on
Okay,
the opposite side of New York City, but equally, actually, probably more so out of the way because I'm
okay,
landlocked on the island. And I'm
yep.
pretty far out east too. I'm about probably 65 miles from New York City.
Okay. So you're a minute then. You're about what, an hour and a half?
Yeah, yeah, depending on traffic. I mean, if you try and go prime traffic, like in the morning when everybody's trying to commute, it's probably more like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You could hop on the train and be there in an hour, no problem. But I'm actually like right at kind of the Mason Dixon line of like where it is like what you would call suburban and then like farmland. Because
Mm-hmm.
like just east of me, like literally a 10-minute bike ride, it just all turns into like cornfields and like wineries and all that kind of stuff with just grapes growing and all that kind of.
Nice.
So people are surprised when they come out to visit how rural it is out by me.
Okay. Cool. Um, so yeah, so anyway, having you on in the past, like it's always been ridiculously amazing conversations. Like I think people don't expect you to be as much of an encyclopedia as you are when it comes to the occult. And not just the occult, but occult philosophy, psychology, like all like you're very well read.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
So, and it's always a pleasure. Like I do try to find people. I'm definitely more of a theoretical person. I do read, but I'm not able to regurgitate. Um, right. So I can't recall things that I've read. I remember what it is that I've read and why I think the way that I think, but I'm not able to recall it in the same way as a lot of people do. And I think that's due to my ADHD. So I do focus a lot more on the theory. So I always try to look to have people on that are more scholarly than myself. Um, so today's topic of what we're going to be talking about, at least the title for today's show, is forging your own path. Um, and the basis of this, yes, we're going to be talking about the occult, but the basis here is we're looking at something significantly more philosophical. And as you've seen in the last couple of episodes, we're definitely going to be touching on politics a little bit. Not that this is a political show, but it's more of, again, like I said, when we had Shay on, it's more of the kind of spiritual and philosophical aspects of the politics that are surrounding us today. Um, and one of the things that we were talking about before, we got live was the message that I put in my post section, where no, I don't consider myself, inherently right or left in the sense of American politics, but I do consider myself conservative, and I think people misunderstand that statement. Um, they look at conservative and they immediately think Donald Trump, Republican, And I don't think that that's what that necessarily means. So I'm curious, Patrick, what do you think about, like, what do you think that means?
I think the kind of right left dichotomy as it shows up in popular culture and like all this kind of stuff is like very oversimplified. And there's actually we were talking off camera a little bit. There's this thing called the political compass. It's a test you could take, and it's got like four quadrants. There's like north, south, east, west, and most people are only talking about the east west on this. Your north and south is basically how like anarcho-libertarian versus authoritarian you are, and I think that that's a much more interesting metric. When you're only looking at things on that one plane, it can make things seem very bipolar. But when you introduce the four quadrants, you kind of have like all of this, north northwest kind of like way of thinking. And I think that that's a much more nuanced kind of thing, and we don't get a lot of nuance these days. But yeah, I don't think that everything's as cut and dry as people make it out to be. Um, for instance, I think that it's a shame that I think a lot of books and ways of thinking and philosophies have been kind of become such taboo in a world that kind of masquerades as like being against taboos, that there are like certain books and corners that like are no-go zones. But like if you look at the way that like the traditionalists, meaning like Evola and all that kind of stuff, who are like typically seen as fascist writers, like, and certainly they would self-identify as those things, though they were, at least he was heavily critical of actual fascism as it pertained to the 20th century. But the way that he defines traditionalism, I think if you actually read into that stuff, is not what people think it is. Because again, like Evola was a pagan. He was, very much invested in the old idea of hierarchy and kind of like monarchy and these sorts of systems. So it's like, and he believed that our current kind of political system, I mean, up until his time, but I'm sure he would agree today, is like very much a product of a spiritual sickness, and that the political forms and the governmental forms and everything that existed back then were coming from more of a place of spiritual health. Now, you don't need to accept Evola and his ideas and all this sort of stuff. But I think that that's an interesting thing. And there's nuance there that people aren't paying attention to. And you could be like, hey, well, maybe he is right that like the way that the current world is politically is a expression of our collective spirituality. And I think that that alone is an interesting idea, and I think that whole idea of reading people and kind of taking what you will from them, even if you disagree with them on key points, or really doctrinal things, like it just gives you a different perspective and allows you to look at things completely differently. And that's, again, the kind of nuance that's just not in the conversation for most people today.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, wasn't aware of the up and down movement on it. I'm pretty sure that like I indirectly kind of knew that that was there, like people kind of being authoritarian or more kind of like just do your own thing. I definitely don't believe in big government. I think that government overreach fucks everything up. I think when you get the government involved, I mean, it's always a shit show. I remember when dispensaries started to become a thing and states were legalizing marijuana, but marijuana was still illegal on a federal level. You had the fucking DEA rolling into small towns with dispensaries, like 15-man teams, arresting dispensary owners and confiscating all of their merchandise because marijuana was still illegal on a federal level.
Yep.
So the federal law overarched, the state law, and they just, because I guess they were bored that fucking day, they rolled in, arrested the owners, and confiscated all of the merchandise. And when they were finally let go, they weren't given the merchandise back. They weren't given any financial assistance to reopen. Like their business, their life, everything fucking
Yep.
ruined, and they still had a felony on their record.
I'm not the biggest fan of marijuana, weed, all that kind of stuff on a personal level, but I think it's stupid that it's illegal, even still on a federal level. I know it's been kind of like declassified or decriminalized and all that kind of stuff, pretty much across the board, and we're not seeing that as much as we used to. But the whole idea is fucking stupid, like, and for me, personally, I think that like anytime the states get more ability to create their and have more power as opposed to the federal government, I think that that's a win. I think the
Hmm.
smaller things could get, the better. Um, so for me, like, I think that the main concern of the federal government, you know, if they want to say like, hey, no drugs of any type coming into the country, that could be their problem. So like if a ship comes with like tons and tons of marijuana on it from another country, they could in their right shut that down. But like somebody selling within like domestically to other people within their community, I don't think that should be any business of the federal government.
I completely agree with that statement. I do. I mean, I don't partake, but I do think that, it's always been a bit of a stupid idea to have it illegal. I do think that that's been taken care of. I can't remember whether, because it was on the cusp, it was between Obama and Trump. It was one of the two of them. I'm pretty sure it was Obama that towards the end of his last term was kind of like finally kind of told, like, the DEA is like, guys, you can't be doing this. Like,
Yeah.
it's like because we were giving the ability to the state to decide whether or not they want to have this to be something that they allow. We can't be coming in and destroying people's livelihood, So I do believe that on a federal level, that has been taken off the books, but
Yeah.
it wasn't until it happened like more than a dozen times in like I don't know like three or four different states, that the president at the time finally came in and said, hey, we can't be doing this shit.
Yeah. And you know, like me personally, I'm a bit biased. I've been completely sober 100% for like over 5 years at this point. I hang out with a lot of other like sober people, but like I look at like, I personally I love video games. I watch and read. I like picking up art books that are specifically like the Dark Souls games and stuff, especially Bloodborne, all those type of things. I read Yoji Shinkawa, who did like all the artwork for Metal Gear Solid. Love his stuff. Metal Gear is probably my all-time favorite video game. All that kind of stuff. But like I look at video games and I'm like, that's kind of like that's a vice in and of itself. And yeah, there's some people that can just play for an hour or two on Friday, but I think a lot of people get really sucked into like dedicating hours upon hours, and it starts like becoming a drain on their life and it's really harming them. Now, do I think video games should be illegal? Fuck no, of course not. Like, like they could be detrimental to people, but like that's not my place to like tell them, like, and I don't think it should be the government's place to tell people what they can and can't do. I look at like marijuana use the same way. It's like, you know, there's some people who are like, I smoke a joint on Friday night after a long week of work, and like that's it. And I'm like, yo, if that works for you, that's amazing. But like, I think there's a lot more people than would like to admit who are like, kind of tail spinning and not living their best and most fruitful life because of this stuff. But when things can become more socially acceptable, which has been the case for alcohol, for instance, for a long time, people are kind of like in this functional alcoholic state, and people are okay with them being there because they're functional, and it's kind of lost its bite
Yep.
and shame in the general consensus.
Yeah, no, definitely. I still drink, but I have a limit of 3 drinks when I do drink, and it's only maybe like once a week, if that. And I have no issue going like months and months and months without touching the sauce. So you know,
Yeah, that's awesome.
so it just kind of is what it is. And I'm a whiskey person. Like I said, I'll have like maybe 2, 3 whiskeys. If it's a rough night. If it's a normal night, just one. Um, and yeah, I mean, nicotine I think, is probably the only vice that I have that.
I'm a caffeine junkie personally.
Okay, so we all got something. Uh, um, and nicotine is like one of those things I would love to kick it, but like honestly, man, like I like the anxiety and the psychological withdrawal of that shit is oh, it is horrible. It is horrible. I do not feel like me. Like, I mean, if I can't, like, if I lose my vape, if I can't find this damn thing, like, I go on a fucking war path, in my
Dude, my
mind.
my other artist that works for me here, his girlfriend will sometimes come up and hang out at the shop, and he'll just have her like stand next to him with the vape and just keep sticking it in his mouth repeatedly, like while he's tattooing, because he's got gloves on, and I'm like, dude, you kind of get. I'm waiting for him to like get like a stand where he could just keep it like placed on
like
the
a
stand.
microphone.
Yeah, and he could just stuck on it whenever he wants. I don't think he's thought of that yet. I probably shouldn't tell him that. He's gonna rig
Yeah,
something up.
no. Yeah, no. So you'll next time he does a tattoo, you say, "Oh no, he saw the show. Fuck." um, but yeah, so I mean that's the only thing that I think that I have like an unhealthy relationship with is nicotine. Coffee. Like I love coffee, but I do 1 or 2 cups a day. That's it. And I'm obsessed with hazelnut creamer. Um, non-dairy hazelnut creamer. It's just I don't know, man. Just my thing.
Not for nothing, man. It's funny. Panera bread, actually, which I've never been a fan of Panera. You know, it's McDonald's company. You know, whatever. They did this crazy thing though, where like for like $15 a month or whatever, you can get what they call the Sip Club, and every 2 hours you could just get a free drink.
Really?
So I signed up for it, and there's one like down the street from my tattoo shop. So I just pop in there all day and just get like repeated iced coffees over and over and over again. I'm getting like 4 a day of like just like iced coffees. And what's funny though is I always put like a good amount of like skim milk in it, so I'm getting like a little hit of protein all throughout the day. I'm big into weightlifting and the gym and
Mhm.
stuff. And back when I used to live in New York City, I was a bike messenger for many years. And I was so broke, man. I was like riding around the city doing hundreds of miles a week and like didn't have the money to really like even buy the food to calorically support how much output I was doing. And it's funny, I think now all the time, I'm like, geez, man, I could have been training for bodybuilding on top of this if I would have had this deal back then. Because I could literally just walk in, ask for an iced coffee, and just fill it up with milk. I could drink 24 ounces of milk every 2 hours. Like I'm like, damn, man, that would have been like the budget bodybuilding bulk. It would have been incredible.
That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Oh, I miss lifting weights, man. I miss lifting weights. Um, so moving to England, I had to sacrifice my home gym. So I had to sell that off. So I don't have the home gym anymore. And I have been too damn lazy to get off my ass and go to the gym that's around the corner from my house to pay for a membership. Um, and the thing is I totally prefer having a home gym because the thing is like throughout, I'm that type of person that like I'll have like a solid workout in the morning, like a full hour, but then throughout the day, like I just get a random desire to lift heavy shit, and so I love the fact that like working from home, like I'm in between calls or tasks or something like that, walk over to the weights and pick up the dumbbells and just get like fucking 15 curls in, like hammer curls, set it down, go back to work, and you get that like
Yeah.
dopamine energy hit, you know
Yep.
and I love that. I love that, and I would do that all day. All day I would do that. Like, like I would probably do like 15 lifts every 2, 3 hours, you
Yeah.
know, apart from the morning workout that I would do every single day. Um, so, not having that, I'm just kind of like, I think that's the thing that's holding me off from paying for a gym membership because I don't want to get back into it and then want to do that in the middle of the day and be like, fuck, what do I start lifting my desk? Like, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
so,
Bands, I think, are a huge one. Just investing in a good set of bands because you could do a
mhm,
lot with just a couple of exercise bands. So for me, like I've had like full blown home gyms. I've had like just a few things at home right now. Like I pretty much got like a couple of adjustable dumbbells. I got a mace
mhm,
bell, like the long mace that you swing.
mhm,
I got one kettlebell. It's like 25 pounds, which is like super light for me. And then just some bands. And like honestly, like if I want to do something at home, I can get by with that stuff. Like
mhm,
I'll do some circuits of that stuff, and then maybe do a couple laps around the block, and
yeah,
that's my home workout. For me though, it's like typically when I'm doing the more bodybuilding style training, like you're doing an hour and a half of like different weight exercises and stuff. I find myself having a hard time having that much concentration at home to
mhm,
be able to do a hard hour and a half straight. Whereas it's like rather effortless when I'm in the gym. I see a lot of the same people and like have gotten close to them in the gym too. And it's like if they see you slacking in the gym, I love that I go to a gym where this is the culture. they'll be yelling at you like, yo, Pat, you look like you're wasting time, dude. Like, you're stronger than that. Put more weight on that fucking stack. What's the matter with you? Like that kind of thing. So like, if you show up and you're just like not really feeling it that day, you'll get called out. Guys will be walking by and be like, dude, what, like,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
didn't sleep well. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? You're not bringing it
Right.
today.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the things that like I've always kind of wanted going to a gym, like is having kind of like a lift buddy, like somebody to like give you that kick in the ass, when you're working out. Um, but I don't like people, so I've never really like socialized in the gym. Like I've always avoided any type of conversation at all. Like people ask me to spot them because like in England, I had to go to a gym, right? Like so, um, I would go and like when somebody like 2-3 o'clock in the morning because I was still working the same job but I was living in England, so like there's like a 6 hour fucking difference. So I didn't work morning to afternoon. I worked like 3 o'clock in the afternoon to like 12 o'clock at night. So
Jeez.
Dyra and I would go to the gym. We'd go to the gym at like fucking 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's still people that show up and like it was good because there's barely anybody there. But on the off chance that there was somebody there, there's a couple of times like random people, hey, can you spot me? And I'm just kind of like, sure. Like, and it's like, it's not that I don't want to, like, I get it. That's like part of it.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm hyper focused on what I'm doing. ADHD is a motherfucker. And so when you hyper focus, breaking out of that hyper focus, you get pissed. It's not like a personal thing, but yeah, no, that's why I think I prefer the home gym thing, because like I do hyper focus when I'm working out, which is why I can do like an hour and a half straight, and one of the things I'm obsessed with, 80% of my workout, I think I've always done with like a fucking easy bar, man. Like I love the fucking easy bar. Like you could do so much shit with that. So
I actually, probably something that's happened since we last talked. I actually got my NASM personal trainer certification, and
nice.
I started a coaching company actually on top of me tattooing. I only have 2 clients. It's called Ashen Temple Coaching, and I have one client who's like looking to lose weight. He's down like about 40-45 pounds since we started working together a couple months ago.
Nice.
He's doing awesome. And then my other client kind of has the exact opposite problem. He's rather small, doesn't have any like kind of athletic background or really any familiarity with the weight room. So I'm kind of ground up teaching him how to start putting on some size and putting on some weight. So it's really cool for me only having 2 clients, which how busy my tattoo schedule is, it works for me. But me having those 2 clients and really being able to dedicate like my time and energy and my focus to just those 2, while them having completely opposite kind of goals, has been really helpful for me, and really pretty awesome. And then thinking of that alongside my own training, it almost feels like I have 3 clients, and then my fiance is actually starting to pick back up lifting. So you might even say I have 4 in that case.
There you go. No, that's cool, dude. That's cool. I'm glad that you got that. I noticed that on your profile, like the coaching thing. That's amazing. I might have to reach out to you when I do start working out again.
Dude, let me know. I mean, I've had numerous people not really even needing like formal coaching, but just like wanting a basic plan and ask me like a couple quick questions. And like, I'm more than happy to do that too. Like these people, I'm doing weekly coaching check-in calls. They have my phone number. We text back and forth every single day. Like I'm getting like morning weigh-ins, like tell me how your food was today. How'd you sleep last night? Are you getting training in today? How did that training session go? We're talking back and forth constantly. And then also like, I don't like keeping it strictly as physical. I think like it's just as important, all the holistic stuff of like, what are you doing in your life? I'm asking them, how's work going? Like we're talking about issues that they have at work and stuff. And I'm like, hey man, if things aren't going good at work, that's a cortisol spike. Your body doesn't know the difference between, weight training stress and work stress or relationship stress or all these kind of things, or family stress. And it's like, we need to kind of pay attention to your overall kind of life bar when it comes to how much stress total you can handle. So helping them to kind of solve a lot of those issues helps in the gym, and then helps them back in their life. It's this like, one hand washing the other kind of situation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I recently started, a life coaching service called Infernal Compass. I don't know if you've seen it around or not, but we got when I say we, because it's both Dyra and I, because with female clients, there's a certain pillar. It's a 6-pillar system. So there's a certain pillar that gets into topics that I'm not comfortable talking to a female about. So we both work the system.
I love that. That's a cool setup.
Yeah. And it works. Like the 4 people that we have, like almost from like pillar 1, we use demonic archetypal, strategy with Jungian psychology, to kind of get people. So pillar 1 would be Lucifer, and then, pillar 6 would be Baphomet. So the self, the balance of self. So it uses kind of like the pentagram is kind of like, and the inverted pentagram is kind of like the map. So it kind of goes around, and then when you get to the center is balance, right? It's integrating every aspect of the shadow that you've worked through the other 5 pillars. And
I love that. That's very cool.
Thanks, man. The thing that I noticed is I've always been into helping people. I like helping people. But there's something that happens when, like, at least in the mind, that when somebody pays you money to help them, like when another human being identifies that they need help, and then they come to you and they say, help me, here's my money, it is such a responsibility. Like I feel that, like, that's not a joke to me. You know what I mean? Like that weight, like this person is, for lack of a better term, putting the rest of their life in my hands because they believe in what I've built. Yeah. And so I can imagine, like, with the physical coaching, there's probably a certain level of that as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I'm approaching it a bit more like a life coach, like you're saying, like it's yes, first and foremost, we're talking about physical because that's usually the aspect that, people are most lacking in. But a lot of times, like, there's other things going on that they're not willing to pay attention to or even aware of, that they could be doing better. And, I've had a pretty crazy life. I've had a lot of experiences. I have a lot of, knowledge on a bunch of different topics. So, like, why not utilize me, not just for how do I, put 20 pounds on my bench press. I
Right.
can, yeah, because, I have one of my clients, like, he's thinking about starting his own business. And, yeah, we'll talk training and stuff. And then maybe halfway through our kind of coaching call, I'll transition to talking to him about, like, how to find a good accountant.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely part of it, and that's good. That's good. Cause I feel like a lot of, like, physical coaches kind of avoid that part of it. Like I remember with Dyra was training for, bikini. Right. And now the thing is, I feel comfortable saying this because Dyra is very open about this and has discussed this publicly. And I know that she wouldn't have a problem with me mentioning it. So this is why I'm being open about this. But she's a person that is in recovery. And part of that recovery is the eating disorder.
Yeah.
And this coach, I was so lividly pissed at this coach because the thing is Dyra had spent the good part of 2 months trying to tell this coach, it's like, I psychologically do not feel well. Like something is happening and I'm scared. And the coach completely fucking ignored, these warning signs. And she had a relapse. She had a relapse with the eating disorder because of the training. And I was so pissed because if you are going to physically train someone, especially in a sport like bodybuilding, it is, I know a lot of people don't look at bodybuilding as an extreme sport, but it is an extreme sport. You are pushing your body to its fucking limits. And to not take into consideration somebody that had an eating disorder and is telling you that they are having an issue and you just continue to push them. Oh, I was livid. I was livid.
Yeah.
Like to me, it was so fucking irresponsible of a coach to do that, to not take that into consideration. And then after she had to relapse, she told her coach that she relapsed and she said, I can't do this anymore. And literally a week later, she sends her a message like, do you have photos for me? And do you have the payment for this month? And I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding. Like, are you serious right now?
Yeah.
Like it went in one ear and out the fucking other, you know?
And that's a common issue in that world for sure. A very, very common issue is people having these kind of eating disorders, or even if they aren't identified yet. I think a lot of times when people are in that world, you end up, because you think about it, it's like you do have to go through periods of like extreme food restriction and being extremely disciplined and all that kind of stuff. And it's super easy to kind of have things go the opposite direction and to lose perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to be able to identify that stuff. So far, I haven't really had anybody in my own personal coaching who's um, experiencing trying to get to that level of leanness or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
My client who is a bit more overweight, like he has some disordered eating patterns in the opposite direction, but I'm really like, it's so cool to see that making small fixes and not trying to be extreme in the opposite direction give amazing results. Like I said, like he's down about 45 pounds, and a lot of it was just making small shifts of like showing him exactly calorically how it breaks down for him to
Mm-hmm.
choose the fried breaded chicken at Chick-fil-A than it is versus the grilled one. Like that was it. And then like he does that a couple times a week. He goes through the drive-through and grabs like, chicken tenders or whatever. And it's like we did just that. And it was like 5 pounds off. Small little shifts like that, because you explain it and break it down what the actual difference is, and then explain to them how that compounds over time. They start to mentally understand it, and they're like, they could take that knowledge out there and be like, oh, cool. And it's that easy for me to apply it. And then they see it actually happen in real time. And for me, like that's a nuanced, small little shift that you can make and
Yep.
everything else. And like that's helping to correct them in the right direction of just making like small decisions and not pushing them towards like, hey, you're making bad decisions in this direction, so let's make bad decisions in the other direction to compensate. Like that's not,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah, exactly.
a worthwhile, sustainable approach.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I used to pay attention to what I was eating, but I mean, honestly, with her being pregnant and the stress of the birth coming up in just like, I think 6 weeks now, um, I can't be fucked, man, to like pay attention to what the fuck it is I'm eating.
Dude, it depends too. It's so nuanced with people. Like I actually I tell people all the time that like a lot of times like our bodies, like if you listen to them, they're very interesting because they do speak and tell you like things.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are in, a lot of people experience this when they're in states of extra super high stress, you tend to crave like carbohydrates, especially like fast digesting carbohydrates, sugary stuff, that kind of thing. People get a sweet tooth, that kind of stuff more often when they're highly stressed. And actually, carbohydrates have a blunting effect against the negative effects of cortisol. They actually
Oh,
help to mitigate the negative effects of elevated cortisol. So I actually openly encourage people to be like, hey, man, if you're like super stressed at work, you got relationship problems, you got family problems, it's the holidays, all that kind of stuff, allow yourself to have a little bit of extra, especially carbohydrates, just calories in general, because like your body is like dealing with a lot more stress and it knows
mm-hmm.
like, so that's not something to be ignored. When life calms down a little bit, then you could be a little bit more restrictive with it. And there's some people that like when they eat intuitively, they eat relatively within like a reasonable calorie range. They don't over binge eat, that kind of stuff. And then there's other people, if you tell them like, hey, no rules, they go straight to the, buffet and they're eating mountains
Right.
of everything in sight. Like I'm actually more in that category. I have to
Mm-hmm.
be like super disciplined and everything else because I think I could have totally been a competitive eater, honestly. And anybody who knows me well would attest to that. Like I'm a pretty small dude, but if you take me to like sushi buffet, I've done some disgusting things at the sushi buffet, and taken down some of the Goliaths within my friend group who are more than double my size.
Goddamn, goddamn. Yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of totally explains why, like, I had a huge craving for Pizza Hut last night, and I got boxes of it sitting on the counter. Um, so it was good. I do not regret it. Threw on some Chipotle sauce on that shit. I was happy. Um, so getting into the meat of the topic, right? So some of the things I do have some of this kind of laid out, right? And I kind of wanted to start out with the whole idea of forging one's path. I wanted to start on Nietzsche. Okay, so become who you are, right? So Nietzsche insisted, philosophically speaking, the individual must become their own highest value, right? And I feel that like that in conjunction with slave morality and master morality, um, is I feel like that's a pillar of the left hand path. That's the pillar of like the adversarial lifestyle, right? And don't misunderstand. I need to put this out there. When I say adversarial lifestyle, um, it's not being an edge lord. Like that's not what it is. And for me, an adversarial lifestyle is regardless of what people say to you, regardless of what society is pointing the finger at you for, you remain who you are and steadfast in the idea of yourself, regardless of what society or other people around you are telling you what you should or shouldn't be. Right. So with the slave morality and master morality, most people deemed conformity, or demand conformity rather, because it validates their own weakness. And I feel like politically, and spiritually in today's society, um, it's becoming, this is becoming a major thing. People are on both sides or in just the all encompassing kind of ideologue that exists are demanding that people fall in line with one side or the other. One of my biggest arguments with people now is that witchcraft is not inherently political, and I think one of the problems here is people don't know what the fuck inherently means. uh, so the fact that witchcraft at no point has ever had politics as an ingrained aspect of the practice. It's never been. It's not like an essential part of it. Um, so what are your thoughts with? I mean, like Nietzsche and like modern society and kind of like that idea of we have to become our own highest value as individuals.
I think Nietzsche has been like a really guiding star for me for a very, very long time. I want to say I first read his book, A Genealogy of Morals, was actually my starting place, which for most people, that's a rather like odd place to start with
Mm-hmm.
Nietzsche. But I was probably 16. I found a copy of his book in like a thrift store, picked it up, and really, really got struck by that book. And I feel like a lot of the ideas I was introduced to, some of them appealed to me at the time, and other ones I've been chewing on ever since. And I quickly kind of devoured a few more of his books. I only read Thus Spake Zarathustra within the last few years.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, it was the only book I never tackled by him. And it was because I had flipped through it and kind of read it, and the kind of more like mystical parables and like biblical kind of speech was a bit more
Mm-hmm.
off-putting to me, because I appreciated Nietzsche in his other books, how straightforward and direct he was. And I had heard from other people that Thus Spake Zarathustra can be a little bit hard to penetrate and hard to make
Yes.
sense of. But I kind of knew that that was, Nietzsche's kind of magnum opus, so I knew I needed to tackle it at some point. Um, that said, maybe I want to say 4 or 5 years ago was probably when I first read it. I think I've read through it 3 times now. And honestly, I think going back and reading some of his other works, they kind of just remind you of things you already read last time. Maybe you just kind of like forgot about and it's been pushed to the back of your brain, but it's not like I get the level of like each new reading of the Spake Zarathustra, I pick up on lines and I'm like, how the hell did I miss that? That's such a genius little tidbit. And I glossed over it last time. And then the next time I come back, I'm like, there's another genius tidbit that I glossed over last time. Like, this is crazy. And you start making connections, and like certain parts of the book make more sense than like on different read throughs. Like, I think the Zarathustra split into three books. The first one was pretty straightforward for me. I kind of got that one, but the later two have been kind of a pleasure to go back and reread. And I think it's very telling, though. Like, I think Nietzsche had really had his hand on the pulse of a lot of this, his own time and the way that things were going. Um, and I see a lot of his philosophy, ressentiment and, like you said, master slave morality, and kind of this backwards sort of people making virtue out of their vices because we, especially now in this like postmodernist era, like it's easier than ever to do it. Like you could just take any ill-fitting vice that would have been recognized throughout all of history as a vice and turn it into, oh no, I'm actually virtuous for engaging in this. Like this
Hmm.
is actually, and like you figure out the mental gymnastics after the fact because, but I think in a lot of ways, like the hard paths, the embracing of the suffering and the suck that comes with, overcoming yourself is the way to evolve and push past things. In a lot of ways, we're both spiritually and physically divorced from this whole Darwinian idea of evolution as a human species now. So it's like we have to go out of our own way to introduce some chaos into our lives and to go the hard route to be able to evolve beyond this current human state. I don't think it's it's a common thing that people think that like you could stay the same. I think you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And in a lot of ways, it's like human beings have kind of tried to put safety nets up all over the place to try and keep humans where they are. And I think that it's no surprise that we've started to backslide, at least in my view. And I look at, like we were saying with New York City, I look at New York City as an entity and as it exists now. That should be a modern day Atlantis. Who's got more money than the taxes that they're pulling in, the influence, the cultural influence, the amount of influential people that live there, all this kind of stuff. You should go there and be like, oh my God, this is what humanity is capable of. But it is so far from the truth. And that's reflective of our individual lives too. Everything that every single one of us is capable of, we are able to push for so much more, but yet we choose to go the easy route and then to say like it was virtuous all along. Like, actually it's
Hmm.
bad to be ambitious and to go after things that are hard to get and, all that kind of stuff. And actually, the lazy and the unambitious amongst us are the most virtuous. It's completely backwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's actually a statement that I've heard that falls into that. So it's like when you're working hard and you're trying to achieve something, people will always tell you like, why are you working so hard? Right? You're not going to make it. And then when you do make it, those same people will turn around and tell you how lucky you are.
Yeah,
And
or how they knew it all along. I
exactly.
always believed in you, man.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's just it's an irritating idea because and this again falls into forging your own path. Like you shouldn't exist to please any herd, right? Any group think. If that is your idea, if that is your
Do you
philosophy, then fine, but go ahead.
do you know who Cameron Haynes is by any chance?
Name sounds familiar, but I can't grab it off the top of my head now.
Cameron Haynes is probably one of the like top bow hunters in the world. He's actually the guy that like taught Joe Rogan a lot of what he knows about hunting, takes him out on hunts and stuff and everything. He's also an
Okay.
ultra endurance runner. He runs a lot of like crazy 100, 200-mile races and stuff and everything. And he's got two books. Undeniable is his newest one, and Endure is his first. I highly recommend them. But he's got a kind of clothing lifestyle company called Keep Hammering Collective, and he's got these flags and T-shirts that he makes where it just says "must be nice" on them. And I always thought that like the way that he presents and puts that forward, because like it's something you hear when you're successful or like you've created a life that other people admire, but it's taken a ton of work. People will say all the time, "Oh, it must be nice." To like draw on people all day. It must be nice to be able to go to the gym every morning. Must and like, yeah, motherfucker, it is nice. But you know what? It took a lot of work to get here. A lot of work that you're not willing to do, and that's why you don't have the lifestyle. Like all they see is the finished product, not all the work that it took to get there.
Exactly. And I think You know, I know people kind of look at him like a meme today, and I don't think that they should. But I'm gonna you know quote Gary V here. I love fucking Vaynerchuk. Like I
I
think
love
he's a
Gary Vee.
fucking
Yep.
genius. But you need like if you want success in your life, any success, whether it's ritualistic success, it's financial success, relationship success, like you need to become friends with failure. You need to enjoy failing because you're gonna do it a lot.
Yep. And from the outside, that one time that you do win, people are going to think that like that was the only time you ever tried. Like you just walked up and you pulled that bow back and hit the bullseye, and like there was no practice behind it. You know, like it's
Exactly.
like nah, dude, there was thousands of shots that didn't go that way. You know.
Yep. Yeah, and another aspect of that is each failure. I feel like when you're trying to do something, each failure is a step towards success. Like Infernal Compass, I have 4 clients now, and you know those clients are like so important to me. Like all of my clients are. But like I don't think people realize like the amount of like failed discovery calls I've had with people, like where you know they say like, yeah, you know, this sounds really interesting, you know, I'll you know shoot you the payment next week, and I never hear from them again, you
Yeah.
know. And it's just part of the game, you know. It's just par for the course. Like you can't like, and I'm not that one of the things that was so hard for me to learn, you know, maybe not with Infernal Compass, but with like with my design business or my teaching business before that, was that when somebody does that, don't chase after people that aren't going to keep their word to what they say they're going to do because they've already made their mind up. You know, if somebody wants, like what I've realized is like if somebody really wants what you're offering, they're going to pay you in the moment, hands down, like 90% of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or within 24 to 48 hours, right?
Yep.
Like if somebody says that they're going to pay you in a week and you never hear from them again, move on, right? Take that experience, learn from the experience, learn from the conversation, and move on, right? And I count those as failures. Those are failed calls, right? Because they didn't
There's
end
a
in the sale.
recalibration going on there, though. You look at the things that, like, okay, like, do I think that, like, what can I learn from this failed interaction? And then even if it's very slightly, change your tactics. You start changing up things and trying to figure out how you could be better. And I think that that's where you see the phenomenon of like where people win the lottery or something and then they end up broker than ever. It's because they didn't have all those failures along the way and all of those learning experiences. So they didn't
Mm-hmm.
have all those building blocks, and therefore they weren't able to be the kind of person that could actually benefit and like do something with that newfound wealth. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, so it's like it allows you like all those repeated bouts of failure make you a vessel ready to receive success.
Hmm. I'm 100% with that. I'm 100% with that. I mean, it's the same thing with my podcasts, you know, things like that. You know, I've done a lot of web shows over the years, like starting like back. I don't know if you remember Mixer when Mixer was a thing, Microsoft's streaming platform.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I used to do this weekly web show, and it might as well have been called Shit Show because I would have upwards of 15, 20 people on, and like we would start with a topic and it would just devolve so quickly into everyone arguing with each other. And I think that that's what
Mhm.
people loved about it. It was like fucking Big Brother but like live, you know. um and you know it was a learning experience. I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work, you know, for what I want to do, because I want to help people, right? Like these conversations that I have with people, the reason why I decided to start bringing people on the Satan and Coffee, you know, is because these conversations help people, you know, like we're all successful in our own right. And there are people that are watching that are looking for a different kind of success. And they look towards people like us to learn from, right? Our experiences, the, you know, the advice that we add into things. And, you know, this is like, I think kind of like Satan and Coffee is kind of like the final form of, you know, what, you know, podcasting is going to be for me, because there's episodes where I'm by myself. There's episodes where I bring people on, you know, and, you know, Apocrypha is always going to be like my baby, but, you know, that's going to be, you know, that's something different. Satan and Coffee is, like kind of like the final form of everything I've learned from all of those other experiences doing shows like this. Like people will look at like Satan and Coffee and be like, like, well, how did you, get to the point to where you're at, or like hardware wise, this is a materialistic example. People look at my computer setup, they look at my microphone, they look at my camera and stuff like that. It's like, oh, I wish I had that stuff. It's like, dude, you realize it took me 6 years to build the setup that's in front of me?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't just go out and say, okay, I'm buying all of this shit. Like, I bought the camera, and then the camera I bought at the worst time. I bought the camera and the microphone during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So the camera, it's like a $250 camera. I paid $700 for it.
Shit.
So, but it took me 6 years to build this and get to this point and understanding how interviews are done, right? A lot of people that start doing interviews don't understand that the biggest rule in interviews is shut the fuck up. Ask your question, then shut up and let your guest talk. And I've noticed like a lot of people that do these kind of podcasts don't do that. Like if I bring somebody on for the first time, the only reason we're doing this is because you've been on 3 times. We've known each other for a few years, but if it was the first time I had you on, I'm going to ask you a question. And I'm going to let you go. It's your time to shine, not mine, and a lot of people don't understand that about interviews. It's taken me years to learn this shit, and learn how this stuff works.
I think these kind of conversations is something you were saying earlier are important as well, because you were saying like helping people and stuff. I think that need to happen because you think about it, it's like most, Abrahamic faiths, most large faiths in the world, all this kind of stuff. When people are going down those pathways, there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of shows. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of people even in their local community that they can look at and be like, that's an exemplar of my faith, my pathway, somebody that I can go to for answers. At the end of the day, too, if you're a Christian, let's say, if you're having an issue in life, if you're having any sort of problems or anything like that, there's a singular book or the Old Testament and New Testament. And you can know for certain and confidently that the answers that you seek are in that book. For us on the left-hand path, I mean, like if you think about literally what the left-hand path means, it's the path less traveled. It's the, cutting through the brush and making your own path and these kind of things. We don't have a single book. I'm actually sitting in the tattoo studio right now. I'm surrounded by like hundreds of books, and I have more at home, and there's books in bookstores that like aren't in my book collection. And for me, when I'm having a problem, I know the answer is probably out there, but it could be in any one of these books. It could be in any conversation that I could have with any person so it's like for us who are interested in the left-hand path and actually making something that's actually a usable, workable system that gets results for us, to have these conversations is kind of comparing notes in a way that's kind of much more rare for us. Like you think about it, if you're a Christian, there's a million people talking about Bible study and like analyzing every damn line of the Bible, but like we don't have that luxury.
Yeah, no, we don't. We don't. And I mean, the left-hand path is, the adversarial path, as we've discussed. But I feel that, rebellion in and of itself is cheap. And if it's, if you're doing it just for the sake of doing it, then it's just posturing. That's all it is. Throwing tantrums against society is not individuation. True individuation is, bearing responsibility for your own life.
There's a book of essays actually by Albert Camus called The Rebel. And I actually read that when I was maybe 16, 17, right around the time I first started reading Nietzsche. And that's another book that I think was heavily influential because, like as a teenager, like I obviously was interested in rebellion and kind of understanding what that even really meant. And to pick up a book like that really philosophically kind of dives into the idea of what a rebel is, can be, and what it actually means to rebel is I feel like that should have been required reading for, a young man like myself, and there's somebody handing you that. And it's like, well, think about what you're actually representing in society. When we think about the character of Satan as he exists in the Bible, like what is the purpose of that character as the adversary, as this kind of counterpoint, district attorney kind of character in
Definitely. I mean, Lucifer didn't ask permission; he refused obedience. You
Yep.
know, you know,
Or
and go
the
ahead.
Prometheus myth, you think about him
Yeah,
stealing fire from the gods and then being punished for it. And then eventually, I, from a left hand perspective, I love that story because then you have Hercules, who was born a man and became a god, comes along and basically kills the eagle and frees him. And it's
mm-hmm.
like, for us, we can look at Lucifer as like that type of Promethean figure. And it's like we have the opportunity through our deeds and through our pursuit of becoming divine in the flesh through this pathway to free and liberate the Luciferian sort of character, from
Yeah.
the chains that it's been put in. I just love that whole thing. Like I think in a way you could look at Jesus in his life, certainly from a Gnostic perspective, as a kind of Luciferian, man becoming divine story as well. But I think Hercules makes it extremely, like uh, out in plain English, in a way,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the pathway to becoming, great and mighty and
Yeah.
ascending beyond this kind of limitations of human, all too human, as Nietzsche would say.
Yeah. I think what I appreciate about the biblical side of the Lucifer story is the idea that you're talking about, like, this is an oversimplification, but I think it's important to have this, is you're talking about a child that just wanted his father's love and then realized that he no longer needed it. I mean, that's what you're looking at. Like, you're looking at a situation where, like, if you look at the biblical story, at least what people talk about, it's the idea that, Lucifer was angry at the fact of how much God loved humans and the human soul, and felt, you know, unwanted by his own father, because his and his angels weren't getting the same attention. And, the fall of Lucifer is, I don't look at it as necessarily a fall if we're looking at the biblical theology. It's more of the understanding that I've grown past this. I've grown past this necessity, and I need to stand on my own. And that's where the rebellion came. And it wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was for the sake of understanding that I am my own entity. I am my own agency. I am sovereign, and so I think that that's a lesson that, a lot of us need to learn. And I think, one of the things that we talked about at the beginning, with my perspectives, like, yeah, I say that I'm conservative, but I don't think people understand what, at least for me, what conservative means. Like, I don't look at conservative, as necessarily, Republican conservative. I look at it as a value system. It's like my values. There's things that I want in my life that align with that ideal. I want a monogamous relationship. I want to be, the head of my household. I want to be the father to my children, and the rock for my wife. I want, these types of things. And, those are where my values, my personal humanistic values align. And so, if that makes me conservative, then so be it. But it also, funnily enough, it makes me hated by the very people that believe in what I believe in spiritually, and so I am hated from all angles, and I'm not going to apologize for being who I am. And I don't think any human being should have to apologize for being who they are, naturally. And that is what's forging your own path is it's understanding that you don't have to agree with everyone around you. You don't have to fit into a box. You can completely break the box. You don't need a fucking box, and it's sad and it's difficult sometimes because, yeah, the people that do kind of have like those personal humanistic values hate me because I worship Satan. And the people that I identify with spiritually hate me because, I have those other personal values, those conservative values. And so, but I'm not going to apologize for it. And if you, like I said in my post, if you want to fucking hate me, then hate me. Like, I mean, whatever your reason is, I've never done anything to you, and my beliefs will not do anything, to you. But if you're going to hate me because I believe in something, then so be it. Perfect. Go for it. And I think that that's the idea of like forging your own path, is accepting and not being afraid of yourself.
Well, taking from that like Nietzschean sort of perspective, I think he talks a lot about like in relation to the path to the Ubermensch and kind of what he sees as like what modern man should be doing. That like we should be reevaluating our morals and our ethics and our values as people, and we should be doing this on an individual basis, which is easier said than done. But like you're all of human history, we have these people today that want to say like all of human history is just bad, let's throw it away, it doesn't have anything to do with actual like how we should be living our lives or anything. But like that is all usable data that we have up until this point. Like we could see how things have worked throughout the ages, we can notice patterns, we can see like by studying history and the ideas that people have had and philosophies and how these things have played out. Now if we could kind of take a step back and look at these things from an unbiased view, again, easier said than done, and kind of like view the utility and usefulness and effectiveness of all these different ideas and all these different, and pick and choose for ourselves without being shamed or looked down upon by society and worrying about what other people think. That in that kind of reevaluating and choosing what we choose to believe and what we're going to hold close to our hearts personally, that we can therefore create a working operating system for our lives to then move forward from. So it's like, for the way that you might have gotten here is by taking a step back and looking at all of these things, and despite the fact of you being a Satanist, that you came upon these kind of conservative values because you're looking at the causes and effects of things and then saying like, well, regardless of the incongruence of some aspects of myself, I see that these concepts in my mind are undeniable in their effectiveness. So I'm going to continue to kind of go down that rabbit hole, even though it's kind of inconvenient to the black and white sort of narrative that most people are putting forward.
100%. And like to your comment about society, one of the things that kind of terrifies me about the United States right now, I feel like if you the parallels with modern America and the Roman Empire right before its fall are stark and absolutely terrifying.
Yep.
And I don't think people are paying attention to this. If you look at the reasons like why the Roman Empire fell, like the way society functioned and operated, at least especially with the higher ups, in that society right before its fall, like we're there.
I think if you go back to that original book that I was talking about, The Genealogy of Morals by Nietzsche, he talks about kind of the values and what is the good, and like how there's these certain terminologies and things that people talk about that we assume that we're talking about the same thing. But a lot of times, if you get down to the bare bones of somebody's actual philosophy, you find that core definitions actually have different ideas or could vary in significant ways. Now, if you look at the early Roman pagans, their version of the highest good versus the late Roman Christians, their version of highest good, those are two totally different things. Now, they're
Mm-hmm.
both using the like, oh, we're both looking for the holy thing or the divine or like this and that. And they're using this language, so it sounds like they're saying the same thing. But what was of highest value to the early Roman pagans? Beauty, strength, like if you were beautiful and strong and well accomplished and everything, they were like, the gods must absolutely love you. And then if you saw somebody who was lowly, downtrodden, constantly a loser, they were weak and sick and all these other things, you were like, what did you do to piss off the gods? Now you could see there's problems with that way of thinking, but it produced certain results. Now, when you invert everything on its head with Christianity, now all of a sudden the sickly, the lowly, the losers, the this and that, they are actually the most holy. Like all the whole like it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel through the eye of a needle kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I think in a lot of ways that weakened up spiritually, which then permeated outwards throughout all of society, the mind and value system that created the strength of Rome in the first place. And it should be no surprise then that these northern barbarians were at the gate and basically like sacked the entirety and collapsed the Roman Empire, because they were still part of that original thinking and way of being that built the early Roman Empire. Hence why the Romans were actually hiring them for military positions for many years. It wasn't until that they pissed them off and kind of screwed them over that they said, you know what, fuck the Romans, man, let's sack this place.
Yep. Yep. And I feel like, I mean, in a certain way, we're kind of reaching that, you know, that point in the United States. I mean, we've been around about 275, 300 years now. You know, and unfortunately, every society, you know, or every empire rather, you know, does reach that, you know, burning point where it's kind of like there's a choice to be made. Is that, you know, do you, you know, give political power to your gladiators and, you know, celebrating orgies all the time, or, you know, do you actually, you know, work for the people, you know? And if you choose the first one, you're inevitably going to collapse at your foundation, because you're ignoring the foundation of what fucking built you. You know what?
Yep.
So,
And I mean, you can maybe make the argument too, like, you know, you think about it, our like nearing 300 years of existence as a country, as the United States, really pales in comparison to the length of time that the Roman Empire was able to exist. And maybe that comes down to the kind of integrity of the foundation that those things were built upon. You know, like, because you think about it again, like the United States never really had a pagan slab below it, even though I think that a lot of the founding fathers were certainly occultists, and I think that their kind of occult leanings are all over, you know, the Declaration of
agreed.
Independence and the Constitution and all that kind of stuff. And even if some of that was mystical Christianity, I think, but it certainly doesn't fit mainstream Christianity on some level, I think, personally. But you know, maybe that's a testament to the importance of the kind of philosophical and spiritual foundations of any nation or any people, you know, because again, like whenever we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about these things, they also apply to the little things. They apply to our individual lives as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, and I think like to your comment about the, you know, the founding fathers being kind of like some level of occultist, I agree, because I mean the Christian National, you know, isn't going to look at the Constitution and say that it's void of God, even though it is. You know, the Constitution was intentionally written void of God. Um,
Yep.
you know, because they understood that, you know, by combining that, you know, by looking at the history of England and, you know, the Catholic Church and, you know, the control that it had, that, you know, incorporating religion directly into, you know, the political system was not a smart thing to do. You know, a lot of people die when you do that.
One more point I would like to make too, going back to your talking about getting to kind of conservatism in your own way. In my own life, I've witnessed this over and over again because, you know, me being sober, my fiance is sober as well. We're getting married in about 6 weeks, so won't be my fiance for
Congrats.
long, but thank
Congrats.
you. But we're both sober, and you know, we've been around some people and kind of different 12-step programs and that kind of stuff, and seeing a lot of these people who have hit absolute rock bottom through their life choices up until that point, and then seeing the people that they are now, several years in recovery and all that kind of stuff. And for a lot of them, they found what most people would view as traditional Christianity or traditional religion. And for me, that's not the best operating system, which I think Nietzsche would have argued that, like, if it's either not modern nihilism, you know, modern nihilistic atheism, or Christianity, most people would be better off sticking with Christianity. It would create better results as far as living a meaningful life. I mean, it's kind of a meme of like the depressed, miserable, atheistic, like Reddit user, you know, kind of. And
Mm-hmm.
then you think of your average church going person, like who, you know, gives to charity and all these kind of things. And like, get the general census of like how these people feel about life and living and their general experience and like what their life actually looks like. I mean, it's hard to argue that like your devout Christian is not worse off for it. But Nietzsche would argue though that we're looking for optimization. So like, is that the best operating system? Maybe it is for the herd, for the average person. And for many people, like maybe that is the perfect. The problem is with Christianity is that it stunts the growth of truly great men. And it is not a good operating system for truly great men who have higher sights, you know? So for me, like I see these people who literally had nothing. They were at rock bottom. They were basically trying to commit slow suicide via substances. And then they find the traditional Christian path and it gives them a new life and a new reason to exist. And it gives them happiness. Like I'm happy for them. Maybe they don't need more. For me personally, though, like I have higher aspirations, man. I don't want to hear this whole like, it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than, a camel through the eye of a
Yep.
needle. I don't want to hear that stuff. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's good for people who are actually aiming for higher. And I think when I look at, Hercules or the Prometheus myth or Lucifer and these sorts of archetypal Odinic characters, then I see much more higher aims and they demand much more of me as a devotee, as somebody who's looking to walk that
Mm-hmm.
path. They're going to say like, no, you're capable of more. You got to keep
Yep.
going. Like if you want to earn your place and feeling like you earned this spiritual connection and this power and this might, then like you're gonna have to like suffer and you're gonna have to work for it.
Yep. And to that effect, because we do have to close out here because I actually have to log into work here in a minute. But to that, to what you're saying, again, I'm going to go with Gary Vee again here. I think one of the things that's really missing in society that I try to practice actively is gratitude. Being ambitious is fine, right? Wanting more, there's nothing wrong with wanting more. There's nothing wrong for working for more. But if you're not grateful for the things that you have in your life currently and the things that you have achieved, then what's the point? Like I am so grateful, like the fact that I have, a solid 9 to 5 that pays the bills. I'm so grateful that I have the time and ability to do this. I'm grateful that I have people like you and Shay and, Robert Mortem and, my wife and all of these people in my life, that are such intelligent people, that not only, echo my values, to a degree, as a human being, but also challenge my ideas and force growth because of that challenge. I never look for an echo chamber. I think that, an echo chamber makes you stagnant,
I agree. There's a famous painting that's become like really kind of associated with Nietzsche. It's been on the cover of a few of his books. It's called Wanderer Above the Sea Fog or Wanderer
Okay.
Among the Sea Fog. And it's a really beautiful, epic painting. It's awesome. It's like it totally wasn't painted about Nietzsche, but like again, it's kind of become associated with him. And I kind of think of it when I think of his philosophy and stuff. And in the painting, like the guy's epically kind of standing up in this mountain range overlooking these like, you know, smoky sort of fog-ridden mountains. And it's like it it keeps me remembering to take those stops along the path to admire the peaks. You suffer
Mm-hmm.
through the valleys so that you can get to these minor peaks, and maybe it's not the overall summit that you're looking to get to, but take those moments to look down and be like, damn, man, I've come up a long way. Like that's
Yeah.
important. You can't just always keep your eye up. You got to take a moment to stop, and break some bread and like enjoy some food and be like, damn, man, we've really come a long way. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you've done that for a little while, then you're like, all right, it's back to work, man. But yeah, it's
Yep.
important because, like you're saying, you got to be grateful. You have to, understand and be thankful for the opportunity even to have a constant strife and struggle. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. You know.
Yeah. Quickly, there's somebody in the chat named Nocturne that says you tatted his knuckles back in March, and he said you did a really good job.
Oh yeah, Nocturne's amazing. How's it going, Nocturne?
Yeah, he said it a while back. He's still in the chat, but like I wanted to point it out that he's in the chat. I'm glad.
Right
Well, I'm
on.
glad you got a tat from him. I've been waiting to have my opportunity. There's
We'll make it happen. I'm sure.
oh yeah, no, I'm saving a neck piece for you. Yeah.
I don't know when I'll be in Mexico, but in Europe, I'm definitely trying to travel out there more often. So if you're going to be in England, I might find myself in that area. I think my next trip might be Eastern Europe, but I've been actually for a while now fantasizing and by fantasizing, I mean like I'd like to make it happen. I want to ride a bicycle from like Istanbul to Portugal. I think that'd be
Damn.
pretty badass. I could do that in about like 30, 35 days. So I kind of want to make that happen. We'll see
Nice.
if I do. I will definitely bring my tattoo equipment. It's wonderful, like the way that modern tattoo equipment is. I could really pack it up in a backpack and it doesn't weigh much.
Nice.
So, like you think about a few even like a decade ago, it would have been a much heavier, more cumbersome thing to try and travel with tattoo equipment. But
Hmm.
yeah, I might be able to actually make that European cycling backpacking trip actually happen and do some tattoos while I'm at it.
Well, what I'm thinking about doing, I had talked to Dyra about this, as we're getting married October 31st of next year.
One
Right?
year after us.
Yeah. So,
Badass, dude. It's awesome.
uh,
Congrats.
thanks. So yeah, we're going to be doing that. But I want to go to New York State because all my family's in New York State. So I haven't seen my mom in 20 years, right? Like face to face. So like now that I'm finally in a relationship where I feel like that's a possibility and I'm not going to be segregated from my family, I want to take that opportunity that I'm going to be in the States and kind of go see my family. And so because I'm going to be in upstate New York, when I'm done with my family, I'm thinking about, kind of like taking a trip to Rhode Island to see you, and get this neck piece that I have that I designed that I want done on the side of my neck.
Yeah,
So,
dude, I'd love to. And you can come crash with me too. Like we got room in the house. So,
oh, I
you're more than
appreciate that.
welcome always.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. So with that being said, I would love to keep going, but like I said, I do have a 9 to 5, or rather an 8 to 5 that I have to maintain.
No worries, dude.
So, so
I'm headed to the gym. Must be nice, right?
yeah, right. No, I need to get back on that bandwagon. Like the gut is starting to show. I'm starting to look pregnant. So anyway,
Solidarity.
right, exactly. Patrick, thank you for coming on. Like I know it's been so difficult with your tattooing schedule, but I'm so happy for you and your success. And everything that you've achieved, man. So I'm glad that you haven't had the time to come on the show. Like.
Well, dude, always welcome. And if we do a morning slot like this, it always works for me. If anybody wants to find me, I'm actually at Crucified Outlaw Tattoo on Instagram. BikerWitch666 got nuked a while ago. I've been used and abused by Instagram for many years now. So hopefully this account sticks around. Vamachara Tattoo Cult, CVLT, is a brand new page that I just made for the tattoo shop. I got Ashen Temple Coaching as well, just at Ashen Temple Coaching. I'm honestly much more active on TikTok. TikTok has been pretty good to me. So find me there at BikerWitch666. That's 2 V's for the W, VVITCH. And yeah, thank you again for having me.
No, man, it's a pleasure. So everybody out there in the internet world, thank you very much. You guys are fucking amazing. You're the reason that we do this. And as always, hail thy fucking self. We'll see you in the next one. Peace the fuck out, everybody. And